So I think we'll get started. I'll just introduce you. Next up on our social stage today, or in my case, kitchen, is Jonathan Elder. Jonathan is a digital marketing strategist and business owner, and a really huge advocate of LinkedIn. So Jonathan's actually one of the first people that I've spoken to about LinkedIn. I've worked in social, talking to LinkedIn for about 10 years, who's made me want to go and excited to have him speak to us all today. When John and I first spoke, he said that he thinks that LinkedIn is just Facebook 5 years ago, which was really interesting, and that's kind of what we've structured this session around. So there's some really interesting, actionable insight coming up. I'm going to stop talking, but if we can all give a virtual, distanced round of applause to start Jonathan off, that'll be great. And if you've got any questions throughout, pop them in the box and I'll ask them at the end. Thanks, guys. Off you go, Jonathan.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Laura. And indeed, if you've got any questions as we go through this, I'm happy for Laura to interrupt me. If it can be a little bit interactive, then that might be better for all of us. I've run an agency for a few years now, and the last couple of years we've focused for our clients on LinkedIn. We're a B2B agency, and for the last 18 months I've been posting every day, every working day, and that's been quite a challenge, but I've also learnt an awful lot doing that, and I'd like to share some of that in the talk today. The agenda that I put here is, first of all, let's have a look as to what's happening currently on the platforms, and try and highlight a few differences between them by looking at some trend data. Let's try and pull out some detail about what is different about each platform in terms of where they're heading, and where LinkedIn is going relative to where Facebook is. I'd like to introduce a few LinkedIn developments that you may or may not know about. And then I'd like to take you through a lot of what we do in terms of how to develop relationships, because this may be slightly different from Facebook in its focus. I'm not so much focusing on advertising, because I know there's another speaker who is focusing on that. AJ is the man for advertising on LinkedIn. So I'm focusing on really all the other aspects. And I'd like to finish off with the takeaways, some little tips to take away, and some conclusions from what I've found. Okay, so I've taken a few polls over the past few weeks from my network that may help illustrate some of the information in this presentation. And the first thing I'd like to say is that my network on LinkedIn is not your typical Facebook network. You'll see here that out of the 168 people who voted on my poll last week, you'll see that an awful lot of them spend, or more than half of them, spend a lot more time on LinkedIn than they do on Facebook. However, there's still a significant amount of them that spend quite a lot of time on Facebook. So it's this idea that the two platforms are not in competition with each other for many things, is that people will use both platforms and they'll use them for different things. And it's just trying to understand how the two platforms sit alongside each other in a complementary way that is really the focus of this talk. So what do my network use Facebook for when they're not on LinkedIn? So it's mainly this aspect of friends and family. And this is obviously different from their business life, which they're dealing with colleagues and customers. So the question is, how do they want to deal with their friends and their family? Are they mainly outgoing in terms of sharing what they're doing? Are they a giver, or are they a receiver in terms of looking, or potentially looking up some friends and going and finding their profiles? Or are they using their feed as a curation point for a lot of the content? And this gives a distribution that's saying it's roughly equal between looking people up, sharing things themselves, and using the creation nature of Facebook. And this is very different from how people would use LinkedIn. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the current trends. And I was very surprised to find the amount of searching for both networks. Both LinkedIn and Facebook have a significant number of people entering the platforms from search. So Facebook has got 10%, and most people just go straight to Facebook because they have an account, 82% on this measure, and much more, 24% enter LinkedIn from a search. So this means that people are generally potentially looking for things, looking for work information, researching things as they enter LinkedIn. The current usage is something that I'm just showing you this slide because on most of my posts, this is a LinkedIn post. And over recent weeks, I've commented on the trends there, and I'm taking quite a lot of the information for this talk from stuff that I've posted about in the last few weeks. So here, looking a bit more in detail, this is the Google search information for the major platforms. So this is trying to track what the usage of these platforms is like. And you'll see immediately here that the LinkedIn one is very different from the others in that it has this weekly cycle. At the weekends, it's very quiet, and Facebook is much more even throughout the week, and so is Instagram. But you'll see here that come March, which is the where the line, the red line starts, there was a big decline in LinkedIn searching, and that has only slowly recovered. And you'll see that there was a big increase in the Facebook search, and Instagram stayed similar. And it's interesting to try and interpret what's going on here. Is it people not working, being furloughed, less interested in work, less recruiting going on? What's going on with LinkedIn? And indeed, what's going on with Facebook? So here we look at the trend over the last 12 months and just trying to look in terms of what's happening in the US, what's happening in the UK. And you'll see that both the US and the UK are recovering relative to the last 12 months, but they're still very much down. And this is reflected also in other data. I've got some MediaCom data a little bit later that Laura had shared with me. So Facebook massively dominates in terms of the social platforms here. So it's no beating about the bush that LinkedIn is very low down in terms of the mind share, the number of impressions, however you would want to measure the brand share. But LinkedIn has its looking at the difference between the cycle at the bottom here of LinkedIn and the peaks on the Facebook, we'll see, and they're mapped against each other, that at the weekends, the slight peaks on Facebook, and obviously the weekends is the dip on LinkedIn. So it just shows how people potentially could be interpreted as using two platforms in a complementary way. Looking at the traffic overall, this is data from SimilarWeb, where it shows the massive increase in Facebook traffic in that March period. And I'm saying massive because it doesn't look very much on this graph, but obviously it's huge when you consider the overall volumes that the traffic that Facebook has. So I want to compare this a little bit to what's going on with LinkedIn. The average duration for a Facebook visit is 11 minutes, and there's 9 pages visited. On LinkedIn, it is 7.5 minutes, and the number of pages visited is 7. So LinkedIn is slightly down when it is used, and slightly fewer pages visited on LinkedIn. Just going back to this point here that I smoothed over, is that the PR people at LinkedIn have obviously, with this big drop-off in business usage as I've seen it, has come up with various aspects of the network that appear to be doing more activity. And I think they're right in the sense that there's more conversational activity going on the platform, and that's what they're building out. This was the slide that Laura kindly lent me, and this shows the decrease in activity on LinkedIn over basically the back end of last year and into this year, and that correlates with some of the other graphs that I showed with the US and the UK activity. However, there are, with all this data, little quirks in all of this, and for some reason or other, my SimilarWeb traffic showed them to be slightly more even in terms of the drop-off from LinkedIn. So, what's the focus of each platform? I asked in a poll the LinkedIn, my LinkedIn community, what they mainly did when they were on Facebook. And overwhelmingly, they came back with this answer that they were communicating with friends and family, and they're sharing stuff and they're messaging each other. And I was quite puzzled here, because when you look at what Facebook says it does nowadays, it says it's very, very big in terms of people watching videos. It's very big in terms of gaming. It's very big in terms of brands, advertising and shopping and the marketplace. But for my network, they predominantly went and did this communication on there, and they didn't do much of the other stuff that Facebook trumpets about itself. So what do they do on LinkedIn? Well, LinkedIn is now diversifying, and it has originated as a predominantly recruiter type network. We all used to think we'd put our CVs up on LinkedIn, and that would be the end of it. And it was a good place for recruiters to go to see what your experience was. But now it is and it's come along in a very different way than we might have imagined. So LinkedIn have got the marketing and the sales products, but also it's put a ton of investment behind the learning products. And so it's really establishing itself as a go-to place for career development, in the sense of people learning and doing certification in all sorts of different career disciplines. I asked my audience what they thought that LinkedIn was focused on, because we know that Facebook is stated that it is an advertising platform. Its focus is on advertising, and you would think that would be the same with all social media, but that isn't the case with LinkedIn. When you look at the focus of what it is around these 4 different product areas that they've got, this is the set of answers I got back from my network. And I think this ends up, it's got 63 votes here. It's not particularly massive in terms of statistical validity, but I think it broadly matches what LinkedIn would say themselves, in that a lot of the revenues have originally come from the talent solutions. That's the recruiter products. Lots of people think of it, the advertising is going to be the biggie, but sales is actually a bigger product for LinkedIn currently. The Sales Navigator and being able to get to know your customers better through like an extension of your CRM system, and coming up on the rails, which nobody would have really said would be their focus, is the learning solutions, and so they're all well represented in this survey. So both Facebook and LinkedIn have the concept of company pages, and LinkedIn's company pages are very good, I would say now. A lot of people don't really know how to use them because they're good because of it's a bit like Wikipedia in the way that they are formatting themselves, that people know what to find there. They know how to find out about the people working for a company. They know how to find out about the jobs at that company, and it's quite well structured on this homepage. They can find out what the company is advertising on this homepage, and they can find out through the posting quite a well distilled set of communications. So it's not as if you're having to look at a different set of either blog formats or PR press release stuff, or different web formats. With these company pages, they're all formatted in a very similar manner, which I find pretty helpful. But off a company page, this is where most companies' advertising will be driven from, and it's quite, relatively speaking, expensive to advertise off LinkedIn. However, you can be very, very targeted in what you're doing. So it's great where you've got a relatively expensive product. It's great where you've got relatively niche markets. It's great where you've got messages that are quite difficult to get across. So in specific circumstances, LinkedIn, and we're particularly keen on it for the B2B advertising, all of these things are very good. And it's very, very difficult to do equivalent through other media networks. But it is a strategy to use Facebook as part of your nurturing process. So you can initially make contact through advertising and through lead generation activities on LinkedIn, but you then want to use the advertising and the remarketing potential of Facebook to then follow through, because at the end of the day, somebody who is on LinkedIn is also on Facebook. And even though the amount of time they might spend on Facebook is less, it's an awful lot cheaper to get at them. So you can identify the people through cookies, and you can follow them, and you can remarket to them the same message as you've started with them on LinkedIn, and follow them through on Facebook. And it's much more cost effective to do that, and indeed with other Google display networks and the like. Okay, I'd like to take you through some of the recent developments. There has been, as well, around the world, a beta going out of the LinkedIn stories. So this is very similar to the Instagram stories. And this was launched in Australia last week. Previously, it had been in the United Arab Emirates, Brazil, and Holland by a beta, but it was officially launched last week in Australia. And so I got in contact with some of my Australian friends to find out how they were finding it. The way that you come into the stories is very, very similar to the Instagram. It's all at the top, and you can access your friends. You access yours on the left, and your friends on the right. And the friends in Australia kindly experimented and took advantage of the ability to send your stories to your first connections. So Gina here, I had tagged her in my LinkedIn post, and she kindly sent me back her story. It was her first story. She was finding it, and you can send the story as an attachment in the message. And so this kind of crosses between the main page and the messaging product within LinkedIn. Another new development that you may not know about is the LinkedIn Live and indeed LinkedIn Events. There's functionality on the system to broadcast very widely. So if you're a big brand and you're doing you're needing a lot of reach, then you would use a LinkedIn Live session. You have to be a certain size of company with a certain number of followers before LinkedIn will allow you to do LinkedIn broadcasting, and you have to couple up with some streaming providers. LinkedIn Events has been a different product. That is where you've essentially got amongst your community a private event, and they've combined these two products in the light of the coronavirus crisis and shown how they can be used together. And that only was kicked off late last month. But you can see how the developments are being driven by the demand for people to use these types of things. I was a little bit surprised how behind LinkedIn were, especially considering Facebook and how you can do live events on Facebook relatively easily with groups and with the live function. And that hasn't really been encouraged on LinkedIn. And I think sort of Zoom and all these other platforms have been way ahead, and LinkedIn has been on a real catch up with this, but at least they've done something. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit now about how we encourage our clients and how we help our clients in terms of building relationships. And I believe the opportunity at the moment to build relationships is pretty good on LinkedIn. And this is where the comment about the comparison between the platforms and LinkedIn being like where Facebook was 5 years ago really came from, in the sense that you can actually build out into relationships with your first degree connections, with your second degree connections, and with other people. And it's very difficult now to get organic reach on Facebook, whereas it's still very feasible to do that on LinkedIn. A difference as well between how people use LinkedIn and how people use Facebook is in the corporate nature of what's going on here. And the product Sales Navigator is one of those that LinkedIn has improved. It's a very, very good search engine. You know, it allows salespeople to understand organizational structures, to see how people have got certain responsibilities, and indeed how active they are on social media, on LinkedIn, you know, whether people are commenting or posting. All this information is available by Sales Navigator. But I'm pointing here to the fact that Sales Navigator is often used in the team context, and it's often used with support people helping salespeople. So you'd have sales operations people preparing information, preparing content, preparing texts, and preparing lists, doing segmentation for salespeople to then try and build the relationship. So it's very much a team effort, and Sales Navigator complements CRM systems in this regard. So LinkedIn has got specific functionality within this product area that I don't believe is anything like what's going on with Facebook. Now then, to that end, somebody is preparing their profile, their personal brand, in a certain way on LinkedIn. And often people will think that their profile is just sitting there, you know, what people want to come and see. And that may be the case a little bit on Facebook, in the sense of everything on your profile is what people will end up seeing. That's not really the case on LinkedIn, because people see so much of your posts in their own feed that they don't really come back very much and see your particular profile. And when they do, it's important that they see the bits that are correctly managed from your perspective to get the positioning. So on the right hand side, a point I'm making here is that you're going to be commenting on somebody else's post, and that is what people will mainly see of you. So they will see your picture, they will see your headline, and then they'll see whatever you're saying about the comments. So when people talk about personal branding on LinkedIn, a lot of it is to do the activity of what you're doing on LinkedIn in terms of reaching out and having engagement with other people. And your headline is very important in this regard. More recently, another new feature was the featured part of the profile, where LinkedIn have kindly gone through and taken certain content that you've got and organized it in a certain way, so it's easier for people to see. They often have to dig around for content that you put on there for a while ago, but they bring it to the fore, and it's quite well laid out. The concept of building relationships is still very strong on LinkedIn, and the method of doing that would be to look to engage with your wider community. You could research them, or you could just go browsing through and engage with them in terms of comments or looking at their profile. And the LinkedIn algorithm would then, if you've looked at their profile, if they looked at your profile, the LinkedIn algorithm is then going to share content more between you because you've done that. But things come to a head when you want to consummate the relationship, as it were, through a connection request. And that is often a bone of contention. You know, people would make a connection request and then try and sell to somebody else. And what we try to encourage is for people to think of it as a relationship. Connection request is important in that, because they then become a first level contact, and they will see more of your posts, they'll see more of your content, they'll see more of your comments, but you don't want to immediately push on them to sell things. However, you would like them to come back and find out a bit more about you. And so we help people in terms of preparing what they're offering other people to do the equivalent of a blog. And this is the article. And here, this shows how your activity is arranged within LinkedIn. You have articles, which are basically attached to your profile. And you have posts, which are the things that are a bit more temporary that go around the whole network. And then you have new formats. They've put documents where you put PDFs up on there on your profile. But we encourage people to have an article and to have a call to action within that article, so that you're not overtly selling. You're not pushing in the connection request, hey, can we have a meeting? Or, hey, are you needing this particular product? What you're doing is trying to establish the relationship. It's genuine to have relationships between companies that want to supply things and companies that need those things, but you want it to be managed so that the buyer is a bit more in control of the timing of things. So you want to place it so that you've got content ready, got articles ready that can explain what you do, explain your benefits, explain how you solve their problems, and give people a call to action. And that is best practice in how to develop the relationship. Like Facebook, there's the opportunity to message, and here direct messaging and in-mailing has been very much part of the way that LinkedIn has developed things. In-mailing has got a bit of a poor reputation, in my opinion. It's like you can do sponsored messaging in mails where you pay to be able to send your messages to anybody. But a lot of people now don't take very much notice of the messaging, because again, they're just being sold to in a quite an aggressive, simple way. And it's much better to get them as first degree connections, and then you can have a relationship. You can find out whether they're going to the same conference that you might be attending, or whether they're interested in the same things, in a bit more of a nurturing way. But messaging is part of the strategy. Interestingly, video has been part of the LinkedIn mobile solution for quite a while, and it's relatively underused, and I think it's got enormous potential. An awful lot of relationship building is now more video based. We're all getting a bit more used to doing it in our family and friends, sharing videos, and that is becoming the way with salespeople. And the opportunity through this is how me showing you how you would do it on a mobile. I would find a contact, Angus, that I want to send a message to, send a video message to, press the message button, look down, and instead of doing a normal text message, I press the plus button, and it comes up with a number of different options here. You can send images, but you can send a video to them. And that video can either be a pre-recorded video that you've got, so you can have something ready, or you can record one there and then. And that's often the best way. And that's just like a equivalent of a voicemail that you're sending. I mean, it's even better sometimes that you can just send this, because you can be in control of what goes, and it gives somebody a very personal approach, and it often has a very, very good response rate, and it's seen as not too intrusive. Another aspect of relationship building here, using the medium that's available, the images or the video on LinkedIn, is the aspect of how people behave now in a work context when they're receiving things. Often they would be in a work environment where they have the sound turned off. So most of the time, unlike Facebook, you would have the sound turned off. So this means that subtitles become a crucial ingredient here. I'm showing here the Adobe Suite Premiere Rush application, just by way of example of the kind of power that's available to everybody with the new smartphones, as to what they've got to edit videos on their mobile phones, and this has got subtitling features all built in, and I'd encourage you to explore the subtitling on these, and I think the iPhones can actually do this without even needing to install some of this software that I've got on my Samsung phone here. And just to encourage you to use subtitles to get your message across. Nurturing is a vital part of relationship building, and you can send content that will get through. Entertaining stuff is used to get through to a wide part of your network. I've had a post that's gone for 147,000 views, and it had hundreds of comments and reactions on it. And of course, it went to a very wide network who are way more than my first connections. And got quite a few people coming back. If you look at my profile views on those few days, it was enormous. However, often you'd want to be a lot more concentrated in the message that you're getting across. You don't want it just to go to everybody. So it must be more like a promotional message at the other end of the scale. And it's important to know that with your content, with your posting, that you should be aiming to have a spectrum here of stuff that you can get out to get your brand wide in terms of awareness, but also that you can be quite specific in people that you're targeting, and you actually want to do bottom of the funnel offers, you actually want to do promotions, you actually want to connect with people in a personal way, and that is also very possible using the same medium, the posting mechanism. LinkedIn isn't brilliant on analytics at the moment, but it's obviously a key important in any corporate use of social media to use the analytics. It's slightly better for the advertising than it is for the organic stuff. It's very difficult for a salesperson to really see what's happening in terms of and getting guidance on their posting and really what they should do next. But obviously there are developments going on in this area where people can get better and better analytics, because if you can't measure it, then you can't really understand what to do next. So I'm coming to my final couple of slides here. The learnings over the last 18 months. Well, first of all, I would say that once you start posting in anger and have a community of people that respond to your posts, then you start to kind of post in a different way if you're expecting people to respond to you. And that's one of the key learnings that I would say is write your posts not as if you're addressing the world, but as if you're addressing specific people that you know. And often it'd be really weird. I will write a post because I'm thinking of a particular customer, I'm thinking of a particular problem that they've had, I'm thinking a bit of advice that they've sought. And they will ask me this question, and I will address it in a post. And it actually gets through to my, like it's amazing in terms of the people who respond are the people that I kind of wanted to respond to that. So there's an awful lot of people get to see your stuff that you don't know that's getting, the people who are just quiet and don't respond. But then when you write something that's relevant to them, they actually come out and they respond, and you think, wow, that was meant for you, and you come back and you start a bit of a discussion on here. And this discussion in LinkedIn is going on in your feed. Your feed becomes your groups. Groups is really dead. Groups has been something that LinkedIn have tried to resurrect a couple of times, but really you don't want to go into try and have a discussion in a group. You want to basically have a subject on your own feed or on somebody else's feed, and you start debating and discussing on that feed, and that becomes the group for that particular topic. And then another day something else may spark everybody off, but LinkedIn will give the post some visibility, and it'll go around different it will reach out to different people depending on how the post is being responded to, whether people are engaging with it, the comments, and often it'll matter how well the post does in the first hour, and then LinkedIn will propagate it on that basis. So LinkedIn, I think, is a lot about what's happening in the feed at the moment, in terms of the member is looking at their own feed. It's a lot less about these different products. Of course, there's LinkedIn Learning you can go to. Of course, there's the talent and the marketing solutions and the sales solutions. But I think for most people, most members, LinkedIn is much more one product to them, the sort of member experience, a bit more like Facebook was before Facebook split out into different product areas. And I think LinkedIn is about this wider people engagement, using posts and comments. You do actually get out to everybody. It's less about curating everybody else that you follow into your own feed. There's less in terms of watching videos. There's no games. There's no, in terms of time on platform, it's not really spent on LinkedIn watching videos, and it's certainly not spent watching or playing games, and there isn't the same sort of eBay marketplace aspect to LinkedIn. And finally, LinkedIn is a lot less focused on advertising. We've said that in the way that they position themselves, and it's a lot more about other things, and I think it's still way behind Facebook in terms of the advertising. My final slide here is the takeaways. So they may be a little bit niche, they may be something that you hadn't even considered. LinkedIn is the opportunity to build real relationships. Obviously, it's in a professional context, but the social nature of this commenting is to be encouraged. There's only about 4% of people post with their own content. Often you'll end up sharing the company's content, which isn't quite the same. But when you do post your own content, it is quite rewarding, and it's quite, there is a social aspect to it. You get real comments back, and it's useful when you go and do real social comments on other people. The video messaging is growing, and it's something, again, that makes it more human, and LinkedIn is very much encouraging the human aspect of communication. And finally, this point about subtitles, again, professional environment, get going on getting the text. It's critical for people to be able to get your message. Laura, I think that's me about done. I don't know if there are any questions.
We haven't actually had any questions through on the stream. I think everybody has just been taking that in. There was so much amazing information there. I actually do have a question though. You talked a lot about stories on LinkedIn and video messaging, but also that all of the value comes from actually posting like longer form content and engaging with people in the comments. How do you think behavior on the platform might shift as people start to use it more as a broadcast medium in their stories rather than sort of in the feed? Do you think people will end up spending less time, more time? Do you think the way people engage will change? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think it's a difficult one. It's almost a really bad one in a way for corporates, or for because the stories thing will intensify it. I think I'm looking forward, because I've got quite a community of a few thousand people that I get good engagement with every day. And I think that would intensify with stories. I think everybody, because at the moment, the nature of a post, the life of a post is about 36 hours. So a life of a post is not very much different from the life of a story. And so people are coming back every day to see what, in my instance, because I've built this up, what's Jonathan saying today, they'll actually be a bit on the lookout for it. So that's not too much different from stories. And I think that the story concept will be good but having everybody more engaged with the platform is a double-edged sword, because obviously corporates are looking to have people productive. They don't want them just sharing stories. They don't want them just being social. So that aspect of it could be a little bit tricky.
I think that's going to be really interesting, actually, as businesses start to see people shift. I can't imagine walking into our office and seeing people storying from their desk on LinkedIn instead of anything else. I think it's going to be, see, working for a big company, there's more rules about what you can and can't do.
Exactly.
Which is going to be really, will you be using stories when it launches in the UK? Will you be using it yourself, do you think?
Oh, definitely be using, because basically you're using it more like a, I mean, considering it as a professional tool, it's like you're a salesperson and you're doing multiple messages it's like you're doing, because at the moment, if you use big products that do email blasts, then you're going to be using stories a little bit like that.
Mm.
And it's the equivalent of a professional email blast. It's just a different way of doing work. So I can see how it can be. You can have somebody sitting at the desk. You could be talking to a number of your suppliers, briefing them, just on a more regular basis about opportunities, or if you want them to contribute or think about something. Different ways of working.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about mass briefing of suppliers, but that's definitely something that I'll try. I think I'll probably adopt LinkedIn stories when they let me have filters over my face in the same way that Snapchat or Instagram do.
Yeah, I can't imagine what LinkedIn filters will look like. Yeah,
put glasses on, anything that will make you look a little bit more professional, maybe. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think that's all we've got time for. Guys, thank you for listening. If you've got any follow-up questions, you can email me on laura.thomas@mediacom.com and I'll be able to pass them across. Otherwise, enjoy your lunch and we will see you at 1:40. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.